Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of a conversation about racism. Over the past couple of months, I have been joined by a panel of people from across the country who have an interest in social justice, the elections, racism, uh, the economy, et cetera, as it relates to the 99% of us. So before we get started, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves and what state you live in. So we'll start with Peter.
Yes, Peter Corbett, and I'm in Arizona. We're enjoying the 100-degree weather still in October.
Jeb.
I'm Jeb Buffington. I'm in Western North Carolina, up in the mountains. It's cool this morning, so I'm missing some of that temperature.
Bruce.
Bruce Dunn here in Daytona Beach, Florida. Nice, cool weather, about 75, 80 degrees. Still tired. I'm working high school football last night. Since I can't do my regular ESPN stuff, I got to find ways to stay busy.
Terry.
Hi, this is Terry Lucas Washington. I live in Bakersfield, California, where we're still in the 90s in October as well.
Wow. Okay. Are you near the wildfires by any chance?
No, would be closer, like sort of central south. So I'm like right about 45 minutes, an hour from Los Angeles.
Okay. Vicky?
Hi, I'm Victoria Noe. Vicky is fine too. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, and according to my phone, it's 55 degrees here.
Ooh.
I don't believe it's 55 degrees. I think that's wishful thinking. I think it's way closer to 45 degrees because of the wind. And I have to be outside this evening for a pig roast, and I'm not looking forward to this.
OSHA.
Hi, I'm Osha Davidson, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's 78 degrees still here, but it's early, and it's going to be hot.
And Brooks? After you unmute yourself?
Am I unmuted? Yeah.
You're fine now. I can hear you.
One of those mornings. Aloha kako. My name is Brooks Bays. I'm in Honolulu, and I'm a little late because I had to run around and close my windows because it's about to rain. But it's about maybe 80. So it's usually
Awesome.
about 80.
And what time is it there?
It's 7 a.m.
7 a.m. And I always appreciate you getting up out of your bed.
None of my
to
friends
be on this call. When all of us have, we've all had breakfast, we've all had our coffee, and you're just getting up. So
I'm like, what? Where? Yeah.
thank you.
My friends
And,
joke I just
Judy?
stay up. So
Hi, I came in a little late. I'm here sitting in my car just because it's nice and quiet and cozy. So I'm had a little trouble getting in because I think I hit the wrong link, but I'm glad to be here.
Okay,
I'm glad
great.
to see you, Bev.
I'm glad to see you too, Judy. And you're in North Carolina with me, correct?
Yes, I'm in North Carolina. Yes. Mhm.
All right. And last but not least, Gary. Gary, introduce yourself and tell us where you are. After you unmute yourself as well.
I know it. You would think as much time as I spend on Zoom, I would remember to unmute myself, right? My name is Gary Jones, and I'm living in Philly, by way of North Carolina for all my North Carolinians in here. It is currently a little chilly here in Philly. It's in the 50s, and so that's the start of it being cold for us here. You know, for those people who don't like cold weather. But otherwise, doing well.
Great. And you know what, Judy, I don't even know what the temperature is right now in North Carolina. I haven't been outside at all this morning. Can you give me some idea of what it is?
I would say it's somewhere 60-ish. Let's see. I've got my little watch here. Yeah, it's like around 60. It's
Okay.
crisp. It's
Crisp.
nice.
Yeah, yes, I like that word. It's a crisp day in North Carolina. All right, at least in our part of North Carolina, because Jeb is up in the mountains. It's a little chillier there. Okay,
Yes.
so we're going to go ahead and jump right in here. Today we're talking about voting, and we're talking about voting suppression, and we're talking about, what we can do to ensure that people get out the vote. So, by a show of hands, how many of you have already voted? Okay, that's just about everybody. So let's start with Peter. Peter, tell me, when did you go to vote, and what was that experience like for you?
I went on a Tuesday with my wife and daughter, and we have mail-in ballots, but instead we got them this week or last weekend. And instead of mailing them in and taking any risk with that, we took them to Scottsdale City Hall and dropped them in a box. It took just a couple of minutes to walk from the parking lot, no line, and a steady stream of people were voting. And as of Friday, 160,000 people had already cast their ballots in Maricopa County, the Phoenix area, which is much higher than the usual. So it's trending very well.
And did you have to have your ballot certified at all, witnessed at all before you dropped it off?
No, you do sign it, and if you do carry somebody else's ballot in, if they have a reason that they're not physically able or have a reason, you have to sign a ballot that you carry and drop off for another person. But that's still the only other requirements. Arizona's mail-in system is very good, and it's been going on for years. And it saves all those times, hours long waits in some of the bigger elections in recent years. So it's a very high percentage of people who are voting by mail in Arizona.
And when did early voting start in Arizona for you?
I believe it was Monday.
Okay, great. All right, Jeb, I think you raised your hand and said that you had voted already. Is that correct?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll hold off on you. We want the people who voted first. So let's go to Nikki. Did you early vote?
I did. I requested a vote by mail ballot the first day they were available. You could, and so did my daughter. Mine arrived pretty quickly, and yesterday, because Thursday was the first day that there was expanded early voting in Chicago. So I can only speak to the city. I can't speak to the rest of the state. So instead of having 2 locations downtown, there were now 52. There's one in each ward of the city. And so I decided I wasn't going to mail it. And one of the reasons I wasn't going to mail it is because you have to sign it on the envelope on the outside. And I thought, what if it got wet and your signature got smeared? Like, I was not taking a chance with that. So I dropped it off at our ward's early voting site yesterday. Most of the people there were doing the same thing. They had already filled out their ballot and they were dropping it off. My daughter lives in South Korea, and she requested her ballot the same day I did. She still does not have it. And by Illinois law, hers should be postmarked by October 4th.
Wow.
So this is a problem. So she's called the embassy in Seoul, and if she prints out the ballot from the website, fills it out, and sends it to the embassy in Seoul, then they will return it to the States. But she's had problems before living out of the country and trying to vote. Real serious problems where she does not get her ballot at all, or she gets it weeks after the election itself. So that's, it's a voter suppression issue that most people don't think about, because when people talk about overseas citizens, they think you're only talking about the military, and that's a whole different process for the military.
Exactly. Wow. Now that I did not know. Okay. Terry, did you say you voted yet?
No, I never.
Okay, hold it. I just want to talk to the people who voted. Brooks, have you voted yet? Judy, have you voted yet?
I did.
Okay, when did you vote and what was the situation like for you?
I requested a mail-in ballot, which I wasn't intending to use. I requested it only because I have a neighbor who recently had a liver transplant, and she wants to use the mail-in, she just wants to drop it off. But I ended up going ahead and filling it out, and I took it to the poll. I had to wait in exactly the same line as everyone who was voting. Took about 3 hours, which it didn't bother me per se because I found someone to talk to and I had a great time. But I can see where this would be discouraging for other people, especially when they had filled out their ballot. There are no ballot boxes in North Carolina. I can take it to the Board of Elections, which is in Nightdale. I've heard that they're usually taking in about 1,000 ballots a day there, and it's a quicker process than doing what I did. But I had to sign whoever the person just before me was, had to sign the envelope and all of that, had to fill out another paper when I got to the place where I was turning in my ballot, and then they put it in a lock box. The really frustrating part is for my neighbor. She has no close relatives who live here. And only a close relative can drop off a ballot for someone else. So she is either going to have to mail it, which she just doesn't trust the mail service. She wants to make sure her ballot is there, or she's going to have to go. I'm probably going to end up having to take her to Nightdale to drop off the ballot if she decides that she wants to pursue dropping it off herself. Because I'm not permitted to take it in for her, which is extremely frustrating.
Wow. Okay, Gary, did you vote yet?
Yes, I did.
And what was your experience like? When did you vote?
I voted last Saturday. My wife and I, we had requested mail-in ballots, and it was a relatively easy situation. It wasn't difficult. It, we walked in. They had a box that we could drop it off in. They checked to make sure that they were checking to make sure that the envelope was filled out correctly, that you had signed it correctly and everything. But it's relatively easy. Philadelphia has, I think they have 7 drop-off centers now, where you can actually go in, and if you want to do early voting, you can do it that way. And they're also registration centers as well. So they have them in different areas of the city where you can go at. So it's pretty easy.
Okay, well, that's good. OSHA. Okay, well, let's start talking to the non-voting folks yet.
Okay.
So let's start with you, OSHA, since you have not voted. Why have you not voted? What are you waiting on? And what else can you tell us about what's going on in your area as far as the voting process goes?
Okay. Well, I haven't voted yet for a couple of reasons. One is we have a really long ballot with ballot initiatives, and it's taking time to research them. But my wife and I are planning on doing that this afternoon, so we can get our ballots in plenty of time. Again, the voting in Maricopa County, mail-in voting has a long history here. We've been doing it, I think, ever since we moved here 20 years ago. So that's how we've always done it. We may drop off the ballots though once we fill them out. The main reason I haven't voted yet is because I'm trying to finish my podcast on the Wilmington Massacre of 1898. And, you know, I'm a one-person production company, and I have so many interviews and clips and things, but it has nothing to do with not taking the election very, very seriously. I do take it very seriously.
Okay, Jeb, you haven't voted yet. You're leading a whole voting coalition up there in the mountains. What's going on? Why are you waiting?
Yeah, I've made over 100 calls to people on the NAACP voter list to get them to vote early or to use absentee voting. Um, we are going to vote, and we'll vote early. I just wanted North Carolina, as you know, just started voting on Wednesday. The lines were pretty long. I'm sorry, Thursday. The lines have been pretty long. I just got an email just now, or a text message saying that there are no lines today. So I suspect we'll go down Monday and vote. My wife needs to be very careful about not exposing herself because she has patients who are at high risk, cancer patients, AIDS patients, and that kind of stuff. So we are very, very careful, and we just don't want to wait in line if we don't have to.
Have
So
you
we're
heard of any
going.
problems in the area where you are of like voter suppression, intimidation, etc.?
No, but we're very lucky. The county where I live is called Transylvania, which always gets laughs from people who don't know, the origin of that. But anyway, we're very lucky to have both a pretty open-minded county sheriff, and then the only real city, big town here is Brevard, and our police chief is also very open-minded and has been very supportive of the NAACP and our weekly Moral Monday outings and all that stuff. So neither of those guys or their teams would let anything like that go on. The worst we have is one pickup truck with a bunch of Trump signs that parks in the Ingalls parking lot where everybody goes shopping here, and people just sort of, well, that's that guy again. And evidently he's there because we're all voting in the old disused Kmart, which is right next to the Ingalls. But his truck is parked far enough away so that it's not impinging that distance, that perimeter limitation. Other than that, I haven't heard of anything, poll watchers or intimidation or anything.
Perfect. Okay, Terry, you haven't voted yet. What's going on? When are you going to vote?
Well, our early voting only consists of us dropping our ballots into a box. There is no in-person where we can actually go in and vote. So I always vote in person. I am an in-person voter. I've never did a mail-in ballot, not even the drop in the box type like thing or anything else. It's just a feeling of confidence that I get. And not only that, at my voting place, we have so many in this little city that I live in Bakersfield, California. It's not that small, but we probably have about 100 places that you actually physically can go vote. So I never had any problems with standing in line, and this probably will not even be a line. Give you a good example. When I went to go for the primaries, there was nobody there. Nobody there. So I just feel real confident.
Okay, so you don't have any fears about COVID, standing in long lines? But you don't think there's going to be any long lines?
I don't think there's going to be any long lines, but yeah, I do have issues because I do have pre-existing conditions. So what I will do, like whenever I normally go out, I double mask. I do have a N95 mask, and I double mask whenever I go out, just because of that. I have asthma. So because it is, a respiratory thing, I really have to be extremely careful.
Your state is the state where the GOP is putting out these fake mail drop-off boxes.
And they said that they didn't have to, that they're not going to comply and take them up. So I am not. So when my daughter went yesterday to vote, I says, well, did you make sure it wasn't one of the fake boxes? Because you have to be concerned with that. Yeah, but she went to the one that was on the actual address on her ballot, so she will be okay. But you can't trust it now. Not here.
Right. I can see that. Okay, thanks, Terry. Brooks, you haven't voted yet.
Nope, I have not, because yesterday they had a forum for city prosecutor, and I have to decide whether I want to vote for the idiot or the idiot. And
Of a choice.
I know, it's horrible. It's not as bad as the voting for mayor, because it's between and the bland, stupid jerk. So that's pretty easy. But Honolulu only has mail-in this time. And we only have 2 drop boxes for this half of the island of Oahu. So everybody, pretty much everybody's planning on putting it, in the mail or dropping. I'm probably going to put it in the mail, but I'm not worried about voter suppression here. I've never experienced lines. I've never experienced, any of that voting in person. I've always liked the ritual of voting in person. It's always been really important to me. So I'm sad that I don't get to do that this year. But
Right. Okay.
but anyway, so I'm going to look into see what they said about these particular issues.
Gotcha.
And then drop in the mail on Monday.
All right.
Or maybe
thanks.
drive out to Hawaii Kai and put it in the box. But
Gotcha.
Real quick, Beth, I just
Yes.
wanted to just add when he said something and mentioned to me. There's a very large Hispanic Latino population in the city that I live in. It is also a very conservative place as well. You see a lot of Confederate flags everywhere. I mean, I even seen a video on Twitter that took place actually in my town, right here where I live. So I do anticipate quite a bit of so-called militia or what have you, of voter intimidation on election day here.
Wow. Okay. Wow. All right, Bruce, you haven't voted yet.
Nope, haven't voted because here in the wonderful swing state of Florida, our early voting doesn't begin until Monday.
Oh.
So that's where we can actually go to the polls. Now, of course, you can do absentee ballot, mail-in, and anything else. I've never done it. I'm not going to do it. My wife has done it. My son has done it. They've already mailed in their ballots. But I go to the polls. I've always done it since I was old enough to vote. So I go, usually because of where I live, I'm usually the only Black person there. And I go there very proud, wearing as much media paraphernalia as humanly possible to get people's reactions when I get there. And because I have pre-existing conditions, I'll be shield, mask, logos, dressed very nicely, waiting for someone to at least say something, and then I'll engage them in a debate right there in the line.
And I know you will too, and you will win that argument. Okay, so for me, we have something called curbside voting, and this is for people who have some type of physical disability or they're elderly and frail. And it took us about an hour just to get through curbside. I voted the very first day. Our initial polling place, when we went, we were told by one of the poll workers that it would take up to 3 hours, but they gave us an alternate location, which we did go to. But as I said, it took about an hour. So let me ask this question, because Brooks and OSHA brought up something I thought was really interesting. How many of those candidates on the ballot did you really know? Because here's the thing. On the back page of the ballot, I didn't know anybody. Now, I will say this. One of our local restaurants had a voter guide, and the candidates could, write in, and say whatever they wanted to say about themselves and the positions that they take on certain issues. So I did look at that, but I really didn't know like who was running for the auditor, and who was running for the commissioner of agriculture. So let me ask you all this. OSHA, let's start with you, since you and Brooks kind of, raised this. You said you were really researching the issues. How confident are you when you go to cast your ballot that you will be making an informed decision based on your research?
Fairly confident because there are voting aids that voting guides that explain issues. Um, the problem though is that in our county we have, I think it's 4 million people, something like that. So there's a huge number of people spread out across this valley of the Phoenix greater metropolitan area in the county, that there's so many people running for so many offices. It does make it very difficult. Um, but one plug I'd like to make for Arizona and that other states, I wish they would adopt it, is someone mentioned just a minute ago that you don't know if your ballot's been counted. We do have a verify system where you can go online a day or two after you've put in your ballot and see if it's been counted. And if it hasn't, there's still time to request another ballot.
Do you know if this is nationwide or is it just exclusive to Arizona?
I don't know if it's even all of Arizona. I just know Maricopa County has it.
Okay, I will look into that.
Verification.
Say that again, Vicki.
When you vote absentee, vote by mail in Chicago, you get an email when your ballot is received by the Board of Elections.
Okay.
They send you one email when they send it out and another when they receive it back from you.
But
Okay, that's good to know.
It doesn't show
because they told me. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Osha.
I was just going to ask if it shows whether your vote has actually been counted, because that's what our system, my understanding is that it shows not just that it's been received, but that it has been counted.
It depends on the state whether they count them before Election Day.
Oh,
Some
right.
Some start that morning, the morning of Election Day. Some do not start until after the polls close.
Okay. I know that I was voter 683 and my husband was voter 684. So that's all we really know at this point. Let me ask you this, Brooks. You said that you had not voted because you were still researching between, this and that.
These people.
How confident will you be based on, what you've been able to learn about the candidates when you go in to actually complete your ballot?
Pretty confident. Within the realm of the ACLU puts out a voter guide that's good, which is why I know that, which pinged me on a question. I want to know, how this one person answers this question. She claims there's no systemic racism in the police department, and it's like, honey, what world do you live on? But I'm pretty confident that I'll have good enough information to choose the city prosecutor and, the mayor.
Okay, great.
And there are not that many people running in Honolulu this time around, or Hawaii. And I have friends, there's a special election for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and historically, Haole people didn't vote in that election. It was only Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiians, but they opened it up to everybody. And so now I have Kanaka friends who have said, vote for, Susa, don't vote for Keone, vote for, and so I trust their mana'o, their opinion and who to vote for.
Okay, let me ask Judy and Jeb this question, because we're all in North Carolina, and I do believe that there were similar candidates that we all had to vote for when it comes to the Department of Agriculture, the Labor Commissioner, whatever. Judy, how much did you know about each candidate before you voted, or did you just vote based on party affiliation?
I did look at a guide and did make some decisions there. I pretty much voted straight party Democrat. And I was really not happy with the choice between the senators. I'm not thrilled about Cal Cunningham, but absolutely dislike Tom Tillis. I felt I really I did take into consideration their whatever if they didn't post anything as far as what their views were and positions on issues, I didn't consider them at all. And if they did post something, I read it and picked the one that I felt was most aligned with my views. And it really happened to be all Democrat. And there were a few nonpartisan positions. And I just did the best I could with those and really looking at more what their views were.
And the whole Tom Tillis, Cal Cunningham race is just crazy. And I'm so upset with Tom Tillis because of the fact that he's even putting out these ads. When you look at the president of the United States who slept with porn stars and you support him, but yet, I'm not real clear on, I've said, I don't care if Cal Cunningham slept with a three-legged horse. For what he has done in his record that I have seen and research, because I did research, I mean, I just couldn't see Tom Tillis beating him out. I just can't see that. But that's my opinion.
I mean, and I agree. I agree on that. And it's just, I think my biggest problem is I think that Cal Cunningham really should consider resigning his commission with the military, given he's under investigation there. I mean, I think he should step up and do the right thing on all aspects. And if he had done that prior to my voting, I would have had absolutely no hesitation. I think that's really more my issue.
I got you. Okay.
Take
Thanks.
responsibility.
All right, Jeb, let me ask you, how much research did you do on the candidates before you cast your ballot? Did you know, or did you just kind of blindly go based on party affiliation?
Well, as I say, we're going Monday, but I do know
that's right. You haven't
the
voted
down
yet.
ballot candidate. That's all right. We do know the down ballot candidates because I was lucky. I stepped into a role where for the NAACP, I organized candidate forums for like school board and for county commissioner's office and some of the other ones. I'll be honest. If I don't know the race and there's a D after their name, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, like Judy. But I was lucky. In fact, on the town, the county commissioner's office, I was actually really impressed by two Republicans. There are 12 people running total. Two of the Republicans, I thought these people are really grounded, and I don't care so much if it's local, if it's a D or an R, if they're going to do well for the county. But then both of those candidates appeared on a billboard down by our local seafood restaurant, standing with Trump. And I thought, well, that's too bad, because otherwise they'd have had my vote, but I'm not going to vote for them now. North Carolina does have an absentee validation online. So you can go, and it's not only did we receive it, it's is everything correct? Because in North Carolina, they actually take your ballot and feed it into a tabulating machine, and they get a readout saying it's correct, but it's not counted legally until election day. But all they have to do in election day in North Carolina is hit the tabulate button, and it's done like that. So we'll be much quicker in terms of our returns than some other states that have to wait. Like Terry was saying, California, they have to wait to start counting. I think that's what she said. And your curbside vote is exactly the same as an in-person vote. It's the same form. They just feed it in the tabulator for you rather than you doing that. So your curbside vote is safe and it's counted.
Right.
I think that's all the notes I had taken.
Okay, great. That's good information. Thank you for letting me know that, because I really wasn't aware of taking the picture of the ballot. I thought I heard somebody say I should do it, and I just did it, but I didn't post it anywhere. So thankfully, that's good.
Not a big deal.
Gary,
Not a big deal.
You've already voted, you said.
Yes.
Did you know all of the candidates, or did you just vote by party affiliation?
At this time, I knew a good bit of the candidates. Some of the minor, the lesser known candidates I didn't know, but so some of the ones that were like running for I think we have one that's running for attorney general, and in those cases I did know. I have admit there's some things I do. I mean, there have been times in which I have voted. I mean, voted mainly because I'm Democrat. I'll vote Democrat. There's been times in which honestly, if I just didn't know and didn't feel comfortable voting Democrat or Republican, I just wouldn't vote. I just wouldn't vote for that person.
Right.
Honestly, we both know that just because a person's a Democrat doesn't necessarily make them a saint, and doesn't necessarily make if you're a Republican doesn't make you a saint. So a lot of times it would depend. Most times I just don't vote. Here in Pennsylvania, I think the biggest issue that I've seen is there's like yeah, I'm going to exaggerate here. There's about 18 million judges that always seems to be running. The problem is that you got the local judges and state people running um, statewide, but you don't always know who they are. And so that becomes a huge issue here for a lot of people. And I think what happens is that people will then vote their party ticket, wherever they're at that point. What I try to do, honestly, is I try to get to know the judges or try to look online, see if I can find some information because I really want to know who I'm voting for, to be honest with you. Um, but I mean, I like to your original question. Our ballot this uh, this time was actually relatively small. We had a few amount of candidates to vote for. We had some referendum questions that the city was asking us to vote on, and that was pretty much it. Really, it
Okay,
wasn't
great.
complicated.
Peter, did you know all of the candidates? Did you do
Yeah,
your due diligence and research?
yeah, I did not know them, and because you get the mail-in ballot, which is really one of the nice features of it, is that you can take the time to look online to try to get to know some of the races, the down ballot races. It took a few minutes, and I did find the school board members that I thought were the most suitable for our community. But also, Arizona has a retention of judges, and the whole back page is Superior Court judges you either retain or say no, give them a thumbs down. And it's really kind of hard to find much information about that. There's a judicial commission that makes recommendations, but when I looked, almost every one of them met the minimum requirements. And so what I did find a Quality Arizona group that recommended against a certain, like only about 7 or 8 judges they recommended against retaining them. So I did that, and I felt better about that. And the Corporation Commission is very important in setting rates for utilities, and I went straight Democrat on that because there's been a lot of hanky panky or stuff with the Republicans, taking money from the utilities and giving them huge rate increases. And so I felt good about that. And so I do feel good about most of the selections, and I'm mostly straight D. And so it is really helpful to be able to look online to find out more information on who you're voting for.
All right, thanks, Peter. How about you, Terry? You haven't voted yet, but have you taken the time to study the candidates so that you will
Yes,
know exactly who to vote for?
I absolutely have. Actually, I have did all of my research, and I have my preliminary ballot was inside our little book. It gives you a little sheet where you can actually fill in the blanks and actually vote, that I take with me to the polls, and I just check off from all my research and everything else that I've done already. So I've
Okay,
already done.
good.
I'm just sitting up waiting until November 3rd when I can show up and just duplicate what I've already done. And I actually do it a little bit earlier because my children, they do the whole vote early, but they don't all the time really look and do a lot of the homework on everything. So I have that so that I can explain to them why I voted. Because we have a lot of propositions here this year. My goodness, we just have so many of them. And that took a real long time to do the research for them.
Okay,
I
thanks.
have nothing but time. So
Okay,
don't.
right. Retirement and time. I love it. All right. Bruce?
For me, I do things a little bit differently. As first of all, no, I don't know all the candidates, but I do know most of them personally in the community, and most of them are seasoned citizens in the community. and they've all been running for different type of offices. They're seasoned politicians, some of them school board. I go to church with a few of them. I work with them in education. I work with them in the business community. I know them because they're also on the chamber. So as a member of the chamber through my business, I know most of the candidates. And because I was a vice president and general manager at a PBS station, I've interacted with at least 90% of the candidates. Unless they're a new person, then I'll go and research who they are. But for the most part, my research is very limited to who they are, what they're standing for, did they do anything in the past bad, and family. I do not vote, never have voted straight party ticket. I just don't. I vote for the person. So if they're Republican and I like them, I vote Republican. If they're a Democrat, I'll vote Democrat. It all depends on who they are, what they're about, because especially now, after what we have gone through, I can't hold people to a certain standard because it's just not possible anymore. I've been on both sides of the aisles working in PBS fighting for public funding. So I know what goes on at the state capitol. I know what goes on in the legislature, and I know what they have to do to win. I know what they have to do to keep their position. And I've even been compromised trying to get my funding from the state. So I can't sit there and be very specific on one thing that they might be for or against. I look at the overall person, what they believe, what their position is, and even if they voted for something that I know I don't support, I'm not looking at one issue, which is where I get a lot of conversations with those that are for Trump. They only spew out one thing that makes them vote for it. Well, what about all the other things?
Right.
So if they're going to take that position, I don't take that position. I'm looking at a lot of everything. Do I believe they're true to their word? And then the other big thing is, since I'm a TV guy, I watch the political ads. Who's rebuking whom? Who's saying what? How the balance is between the two. And then I can say, well, that's not right. They're playing dirty pool. I see where they're going on that. Yes, they've got something to hide. Let me go check what they're doing. And that's how I make my decision.
Gotcha. And before I get to you, Vicki, I do want to share, for those of you in North Carolina, I'm sure you know Congressman David Price. I haven't voted for him in years, even though he's a Democrat, and I think he does wonderful things. I mean, I'm impressed with his record, but when it comes to his race, I don't vote for anybody. I leave it blank because years ago, when my daughter was starting college, I reached out to him, to his office. I documented more than a dozen calls asking for some help in trying to resolve a financial issue as it related to my daughter going to college. Didn't get one phone call. And I was so discouraged about that. I said, I'll never vote for him again. And while he does wonderful things in Congress, in my heart, I just couldn't do it. So I understand what you're saying. That's just that one thing. But for me, Bruce, that was one big thing because I was his constituent. If I had only called once or twice, I could see it. But I called over and over and over again and got nothing in return. So,
and if I had had an experience like that, I probably would be the same way. I've only had one experience with a person literally that goes to my church, and she's running for a county council seat. And I've known her for 15 years. But she's been in that chair and she's taken for granted that she's doing it. So I can't vote for her.
Yeah.
And I know her, and I can't vote for her because she's taking it for granted.
Yeah.
She's not doing anything.
Okay, so Vicki, so let me ask you, since you have voted, did you study the candidates or did you vote the straight ticket?
Um, well, in Chicago, it's hard not to vote a straight ticket because a lot of races, there is no Republican challenger. And even in primaries, incumbents don't always have a challenger. But having said that, there are a few candidates that I've had dealings with. Most of them I have not. And the ones that I have were not on the ballot for this election. For many years, I would go into the voting booth with a list of endorsements and recommendations from a group called IVI-IPO, the Independent Voters of Illinois / Independent Precinct Organization. And this was an independent organization strictly for the purpose of vetting candidates for local and statewide offices. Well, as of a few years ago, the local LGBT paper, Windy City Times, they don't endorse candidates, but they put out a voting guide, and it's a spreadsheet of everyone on the ballot with the vetting done by several organizations. IVI-IPO is one of them. The Bar Association is one. Equality Illinois, which advocates for equal rights. So there's like 5 or 6 organizations, and it's in a spreadsheet, so you can look down the column and see who was recommended, who was not recommended, who was highly recommended. And that's sort of what I've used for the last few years to sort of have that perspective, sort of a broader perspective of each candidate. Our ballot this election was 4 pages long, and more than 2 of the pages were judges. Now, there's no way in the world you can independently research every judge on that list. And even though a lot of them did not have, quote unquote, an opposing candidate, it was yes or no whether to retain them. So it wasn't just, oh, I don't need to vote for them because they don't have an opponent. It was, should they be there at all? So that's why I relied on that list so much. But, you know, I mean, people do vote for very sound reasons. Your reason for not voting for that candidate is absolutely valid, 100% valid. You know, when my husband says, well, I didn't like the way her staff interacted with me, I didn't think they showed me enough respect. I'm like, oh, please, you're a white guy. You get enough respect from everybody else, you know? It's like, that did not fly with me, you know? But you're right. When you go to a candidate, when you go to an incumbent, someone in office, and ask for something that you have the right to ask for because you're a constituent, and they ignore you, that tells you everything you need to know about them. Everything, and especially multiple times. There is no excuse for that. Absolutely none.
Yeah, and he gets elected year after every 4 years. He's been in Congress now more than 20, more than 30 years probably. And like I said, he does have a really good record, but when I needed him most, he did not step up. So anyway, all right, so we've got a few minutes left. And so in this time, I have a couple of more questions. For those of you who are married, do you try to convince your spouse to vote the way you vote, or do they have a mind of their own, or are you kind of like-minded and you know it? Bruce is shaking his head off the bat. No. Okay, Bruce, so we'll start with you.
My wife is as independent gets. If she has an opinion, I'm going to hear about it. I'm going to know about it. And there is nothing I'm going to do to change her. Now, even because I try to, because I'm in the media and I've worked in public television, and when we had that thing called the fairness doctrine, and I tried to look at both sides of the issue, she don't even want to hear it. Doesn't want to hear it. Even when I'm trying to find the good in Trump, she'll walk in the room, get the baseball bat, and says, keep talking. So I stop. So
okay.
No, I'm not convincing her.
All right. OSHA, what about you? Do you and your partner Do you line up, or do you try to convince her? Does she try to convince you, or you just kind of go into the ballot and you don't share how you voted?
Oh, no, no, no. We talk about it all the time. Um, and politically, we're very similar, and but not identical. And then we'll talk about the differences. And I don't know that either of us ever convinces the other one of something. I'm more likely to be convinced by her because she's smarter than I am. She also knows a lot more. She works for the federal court system. So when it comes to judges, she knows the name, who these people are and their records. So I, I've found over the years that taking her advice on all sorts of things, I usually end up the better for it.
Okay, great. Peter, let me ask you, do you all see eye to eye, or do you discuss your vote? No, yes?
Yeah, we do discuss our votes, and we're very well aligned. And she relied on me on this time around for some of the down ballot advice, and my daughter as well. I think my wife worked with my daughter to sort of coordinate who they were going to vote for. So yeah, we're very much aligned, and I appreciate that. I don't know what it would be like to be like Mary Matlin and her husband. I can't.
James Carville.
Yeah, Carvel. I can't imagine that. That'd be crazy. But
All right, Terry.
Only we normally are on the same wavelength on most things, except we did have a little disagreement in regarding to our senator, and he felt and he wanted to vote for Republican. And I tried to explain to him that he was one of Trump's real big friends. And he says, well, I don't care because he's for veterans. And it's like, well, what has he done? My husband is a Vietnam veteran. So it's like, so what has he really done for veterans? And he couldn't really tell me what he had really done. So I had to go pull the stats and everything else. But usually we're on the same page because that's actually the way I met my husband was through a political circumstance. We were working at a voter registration booth, both of us. So we've always been Democrats and usually vote the same way, except for that one time when he wanted to vote for Kevin McCarthy. And I'm like, no, that's not who you want to vote for.
Okay. Now, Brooks, I know that your partner is deceased, but let me ask you this, because this is going to be a little different question for you.
Okay.
Does the politics of a future partner matter more than loving the individual for who they are, regardless? That's deep, ain't it? That's deep. That's a
I
good
cannot
question, huh?
imagine falling in love with someone who would support Donald Trump. It's theoretically possible. I could theoretically fall in love with a woman. I mean, anything could happen, right? But and based on an interaction I had with my brother shortly after our mother died, who is a Republican, that hurt our relationship. So I don't trust him or value his judgment the way I used to, because someone commented on there's one thing they care about to the extent of all others. So, which is abortion in this case. And so theoretical people were more important to him than his own brother, his own niece, his own cousin. So basically, if they liked someone different for mayor, I mean, like the mayor's race here is a not politically, there's not a party affiliation for that. Sure, I mean, and my late partner and I disagreed on some, details of, this person versus that person. But on something fundamental, No, I can't imagine
I got you.
loving enough other things, because if you're, there's a, yeah, I could go on for too long about that. But
Okay, so basically the answer is no.
basically, the answer is no. It's hard. It's
Okay,
difficult.
gotcha. Gary, what about you? Do you and your spouse discuss politics? Are you on the same page? Does she try to convince you, her?
I mean, to be honest, usually we're on the same page. I mean, we generally think alike. With that being said, my wife is very independent, and there have been times in which, in different races, maybe generally local races, she, might have a pull towards another candidate that I don't particularly agree with, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I think that on the national politics, we've generally been, we I think probably always have been pretty much thinking the same way about different candidates. But she'll do her research and I'll do my research. Um, so yeah, we talk about it, we discuss it. She doesn't try to pull me. I don't try to pull her. We do talk about why we might believe what we believe about a particular candidate. Um, yeah, but generally we're on the same page for the most part.
Okay, thanks. Jeb?
Yeah, Andrea and I are pretty much like y'all, on the same page. Neither of us, I think, will feel good voting for Cal Cunningham, this particular senator running against Tom Tillis, for different reasons. Me, because he jumped into the race late against a terrific candidate who was leading Tom Tillis, a woman named Erica Smith, who I, was supporting at the time. Andrea won't, because of his infidelity, or his alleged infidelity. I would hold my nose and vote for him against Tom Tillis. I think people's personal business is really their business. Even if it smells a little sleazy to me, I'd probably give him a break. She wouldn't. I don't think she would forgive that so easily.
Okay. Judy?
My husband and I, he really doesn't have a whole lot of opinion. He hates Trump. My husband and I, he really doesn't have a whole lot of opinion. He hates Trump. That's one thing that the UN citizen. But beyond that, we're separated, and even now we're still the UN alike. So, and we're separated, as well as my two daughters, rely a great deal on kind of my guidance. He, as well as my two daughters, rely a great deal on kind of my guidance. My daughter suddenly this kind of I did have a bit of a moment where my youngest daughter
Judy, there's something with your audio that's muffled. I'm not sure what's going on, but I didn't catch a lot of that.
Is this better?
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, cool. Anyway,
We don't
my
see
husband,
you, but it's much better.
right. Yeah, well, I'm in the car and I just switched to private.
Okay.
But my husband and I are separated. He is from Morocco, and he does not like Trump. That's one thing for sure. But beyond that, he really doesn't have much of an opinion. I pretty much have been kind of the one who kind of says, okay, we're all going to vote. So, and he does. And my daughters are kind of the same way. They don't have a whole lot of feelings. I was kind of surprised. My youngest daughter, recently just kind of started spouting all this weird stuff and was kind of thinking about voting for Trump. And I was like, what in the world? And I left it alone, sort of, but subtly kind of talked to her. And she's like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. No, I'm not voting for Trump. So they rely very heavily on me. I frequently will print out kind of my my picks on a ballot and show it to them. And, I think that they pretty much follow what I've said, what I've done. I wish they had more independence and would make their own decisions, but that's just kind of not the way it is.
Okay. Okay, Bruce, you had something you wanted to say, and then Vicky?
Just real quick on with with the kids, with children. Now, my two kids are older. My son's 27, my daughter's 31. But now working in the high school ranks, and I'm running across with the college and high school kids, they're not doing any research. They're just repeating what their parents say. And those that can vote now, they're voting based on what their parents are saying.
That's true.
And when I hear them speak, I'm like, I'm not even going to engage them with a conversation because they don't know, they're too young, they didn't do the research, they're only repeating what they've heard from their parents, or worse, the media tagline.
That's very true. Vicky?
Um, 30 years ago, I was a fundraiser in the AIDS community, and that weeded out a lot of men from my life because when they found out where I was working, if their homophobia shot up, then there was nothing. We weren't going anywhere. That was it. So when I met my husband in 1992, I said, a lot of my friends are gay. I love them. They're important to me. If you have a problem with that, this ends right now. So he's come a long way. Let's say he's come a long way. And, but still, he is by far the most conservative member of our family. He is probably the most liberal member of his side of the family. There's a lot of right-wing conspiracy theorist people in his family. But anyway, there are certainly times when our votes cancel each other out on certain candidates. But, 12 years ago, we were in Grant Park the night Obama was elected, and he was crying as much as the rest of us were crying. So most of the time, I think we agree. Now and then he'll say, so do you know anything about blah, blah, this person? And I'll either say, yeah, no, don't vote for them. Or I'll say, yeah, they're fine. And whether he takes that advice, I don't know. But his interactions with candidates and mine are very different because his for many years were absolutely transactional business relationships. So he looks at them differently than I do. I look much more in terms of issues, whereas he looks in terms of how do they get along, how do they do deals, kind of thing. Our daughter is more liberal than I am, but not by much. She gets to the point now and then where she would not discuss politics with him. Because once he starts on, well, you have to compromise, she's like, nope, not doing that, not talking about that. We really only talk about a few candidates every election cycle. So I don't know everybody he votes for. But like I said, there are a couple I know we cancel each other out, which I find incredibly aggravating and annoying. But like I said, he's come a long way and he's voting better than he would have when we first met.
Okay, very good. All right, so this is the final question as we wrap up this episode of A Conversation About Racism in America. As you all know, November 2nd is just around, or November 3rd, I believe it is, 2nd or 3rd, is just around the corner. And, the rest of the country who doesn't mail in their ballots will be voting or absentee. According to the latest research that I've seen, 25,827 plus thousand have already cast their ballots in a number of states, including North Carolina, including Florida, California, Oklahoma. I don't see Arizona on the list, South Dakota, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Maryland, New Jersey, and Nevada. These are all of the states that have reported. So more than 25 million early ballots have been counted. They are expecting a blowout record. So my question to each one of you, and if you can answer this in 30 seconds or less, What are your fears about the outcome of this election? Do you have any fears? Do you think that there's going to be a blue wave? What if Trump is reelected? What is this really saying about America? And I'm going to start with OSHA.
Okay. My main fears are that through voter suppression and other vote rigging methods, that Republicans are going to take the White House and the Senate, both of which I think would be disastrous. So since this conversation is supposed to be about race, the racial implications of all of this, it's kind of the chickens coming home to roost. Voter suppression really has its origins in Jim Crow. And what they did to Black people, they're also doing to others, but even more so to Black people. So districts and wards that are predominantly Black are the ones most prone to voter suppression. And that's what worries me.
And speaking of voter suppression, I'm so glad you mentioned that, is that Georgia is having a hell of a time down there. People are standing in lines in the primarily Black communities for up to 11 hours at a time, just because of what you said, voter suppression. So it's real. I don't want anybody to be misled. It's real. Let me ask you, Terry, what are your fears about this upcoming election, if you have any, or do you think we're going to have a blue wave?
I think that we'll have a blue wave, but as a result, I think there will be a preemptive as for a civil war. I do not feel comfortable at all. I even suggested to all my family and friends and anybody else that does not have firearms to obtain firearms, because this is no joke. And these Trumettes and white supremacists and everything else will retaliate. And I feel very strong about that. I really think that should Biden win, and which I would think outside of the gerrymandering and suppression and everything else, he will still win because we have enough numbers. I think enough people is voting, but this will be the result. We have a lot to fear. I don't know in many other places, but I definitely know that we do here in California. And it will not be nice. And if you are not armed and not have some way of defending yourself, shame on you. I just don't think that it's going to go. First off, they're going to have to use the military to get him out the White House anyway. So it's just going to be a big mess. And we have a lot to fear with this.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Peter, let me ask you this. You think some white people are so crazy, if Trump does not win this election, that they're going to pick up arms and just start shooting people at random? And how are they going to determine who was voting for Trump and who wasn't?
Who's that to?
You, Peter.
Okay. God, I hope not. I do fear the same things that Terry talked about, militias taking over. And excuse me, I'm getting distracted by this. In Arizona, we've had our share of these patriots, white supremacists and things. So that is a big fear, and I don't know how they're going to target people, but I hope that we have a very strong turnout and a very decisive election. I think that would quell some of the problems. But once we get rid of Trump, we still have Trumpism and the vast number of people that bought into his horrible policies and demeanor. And we really need to try to come together. And I hope that Joe Biden can make strides in that area. It is alarming to see these people.
Okay, someone's phone is on. I'm not sure whose it is, but it is ringing and drowning out Peter.
There was a story in the Arizona Republic on Sunday about a young woman in Prescott, Arizona, a a town of about 75,000 people. She organized a Black Lives Matter protest within the last month or so. A very young woman who grew up in Prescott. And she was, the response was from all these militia groups on their Facebook pages, showed up with fatigues on and AR-15s and just completely intimidated this young woman just taking a stand. And it was just really disturbing. And if you get a chance to try to find that story, it's really disturbing to see people react like that to a simple, peaceful protest.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Gary, what are your fears for the upcoming election? Do you see that it is possible that Trump will be reelected?
The biggest fear, I guess I would have would be, I believe that the numbers favors Democrats, but the biggest fear I would have is that if he loses the election, if he decides that he wants to challenge the election, and if we have a heavily unbalanced Supreme Court, that we have this possibility that we can have a return of 2000 all over again. I don't think we want that. I don't think that the country needs that, to be honest with you. So with that being said, the other part that I think that concerns me is no matter what happens, no matter if Trump wins, if Biden wins, we have such a deep entrenchment into the way that people think and feel and believe that I just feel like it's going to continue. One of the things I think that we look at President Trump, he touched a base that has had some issues. I won't say issues, but have had thoughts and fears of maybe losing ground, losing privilege, however you want to look at it. And that was there before him. But what we're seeing is that he has given it sort of like a root to grow and to flourish. And prior to this, I mean, we've always seen issues between Democrats and Republicans and people that are Democrat and Republicans, but it mainly was kind of mostly politically based. But now I'm seeing something that scares me because we can't have a conversation, with some people, and they probably feel they can't have a conversation with us. In the meantime, the narrative has changed or has sort of taken a sort of strange right or left turn, whichever way you want to look at it. And there's a place where intimidation is almost expected, and it's scary. I mean, it used to be, and maybe I'm wrong, guys. I mean, it used to be that, like, I can remember maybe a few years ago when George Bush was in office, um, we could disagree about him and maybe still come to the table. But I'm not seeing that now. When I speak to people who are heavily conservative Republicans, if they know that I am a liberal Democrat, I am like the worst thing ever. And it doesn't matter all the things in our commonality that might be there. They only see the fact that you are liberal or
Right.
whatever. And I think what our country is, and I'm sorry, I couldn't answer this in 30 seconds, but I think that what's really missing is that our country has gotten away from the commonalities. We all have more things in common than we don't have, but there's some things and some discussions, honestly, that we got to continue to have. It's not going to be okay to to constantly, for example, blame BLM, but not talk about some of the other groups on the other side. And
Right. Okay. Thanks. I got you, Gary. Okay.
I'm sorry,
So
I couldn't.
no, that's okay. In the interest of time, we just want to keep it moving.
Sorry
Judy,
about that, guys.
no problem. Judy, what fears do you have, if any?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Okay. You're breaking up again, so you might need to move to
Can you hear me
private.
okay? All right, let's see.
Okay. Okay, I won't be seen again. Um, I would say kind of everybody's expressed a lot of the fears that I have. I don't know. I'm hopeful and I'm scared to death all at the same time for all of the same reasons that other people have expressed. And I guess I'll just kind of leave it at that. I don't really have anything else to add on that.
But do you think your whiteness will spare you from any
I hope
major
not.
fallout?
I hope not. No, I don't know because like right now I created a voting sticker that is got I put a sticker on a thing with all like a new baby. It says it's a girl and it's got all sorts of ribbon around it. I'm going to attach things to it about like gay pride and Black Lives Matter and the resist for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So people are really clear how I voted. And whatever happens, happens. I guess maybe I need some help in kind of reconciling that. I hope that my whiteness does not spare me that.
Okay. All right. Brooks, thoughts?
Notorious for going on. I'll try and keep it short. I want to build a little on what Gary said, which I agree with him completely. A third of the country, primarily white people, have tasted a new kind of power. It's been kind of below the surface for a long time, since before Reagan, since the Civil Rights Act. And now they feel their power slipping away. They know that Trump is their last chance to enact theocracy, not just oligarchy. They don't believe in democracy. They literally don't believe in democracy. And what they actually want is theocracy. They want a Christian country. And their definition of Christian is cruel and small. It's control. White people in control of everybody, of Black and brown people, straight people in control of gay, all flavors of queer people, men in control of women. That's what they want. And they have tasted power, and they are not going to give that up easily. They've defined negotiation as literally making a deal with the devil. And so that's where the polarization comes from, is they literally think that if you talk to a Democrat, like Gary said, it's the worst thing possible. When I was a little gay boy, I know it was the worst thing possible. I know that feeling. Now they are, I think that Trump will lose the general election, certainly. I think he'll probably lose the electoral college, but it'll be so messy that he's going to be able to argue, if not to the Supreme Court, then, in the public marketplace for the rest of our lives, that it was stolen from him. And so we're just going to keep having to deal with him and deal with him and deal with him until finally demographics just choke them out, which is what they're terrified of.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, you're fine. Thanks, Vicki, and then Bruce.
Mm.
Sorry, Jeb.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Okay. I agree with pretty much everyone. I'm not naive enough to think we're going to wake up on November 4th and everything's going to be fine, or even January 21st. I think the period in between the election and the inauguration, no matter what the result is, could be the most dangerous time in our history. How that 1/3 of the country responds is going to be based almost entirely on how Trump himself responds. If he just says, I'm done with this shit, I'm going to Russia, that's different than hunkering down and, turning the White House into a bunker even more than it is. But I've been thinking a lot the last week or so about World War II and how it's 2.5 years between Pearl Harbor and D-Day. And for most of that time, the Allies were losing. There were not a lot of big Allied victories until in the first couple of years of the war. And I was thinking about how depressing and demoralizing that must have been for people, whether they were right in the middle of the fighting or thousands of miles away, watching all this happen and being powerless to affect it. But they didn't stop doing what they were doing. And so I'm trying to gather some strength from that, because it seems like sort of a reasonable comparison at the moment, because I think a lot of us feel like we're in the middle of a war or about to start a war.
Yeah. Bruce?
I think no matter who wins, either or Trump or Biden, we're going to have civil unrest. If we have Trump win, people are going to, we're going to see what's been going on since the pandemic. It's going to continue until, and I hate to say it, until someone takes some action that then sets us on a whole different course towards the president. If Biden wins, you're definitely going to see unrest. But my theory is Biden is going to win not because there were more Democrats that voted him out. Is the Republicans know that Trump is not a Republican. They went along with him because he supports the Republican agenda. And he is allowing them to do what they're doing quietly. That's why they're not speaking up about him. They don't like him necessarily, but they know he's there to push their agenda and the policy. So my thing is, once the courts are done, once the Supreme Court is decided, the Republicans are going to say, we're done, and quietly, they're going to vote against it. He's going to be gone, but they will have accomplished their goal because the Supreme Court will be conservative for now and forever, plus all the other courts, the appellate courts, the fifth courts, all of those courts will be conservative.
Right.
They will have succeeded in their goal. Trump will be Biden. They won't be able to change the outcome of what the Republicans have been trying to do for the longest, control the court.
Okay, thank you. And Jeb, you'll have the final word here.
Yeah, I'm going to paint an optimistic picture because I can't do anything else. I can't operate on fear. I think we're going to have a blue wave. I think Biden is going to win, and we're going to have a Democratic Senate. I think there is going to be unrest. I really agree with what Terry and the other folks have said. But here comes the hopeful part. These militia guys, they're violent and they're capable of violence, but they're not smart. They couldn't organize a sandwich, much less a picnic, and a revolution is out of the question. So I think there will be localized violence. I think African Americans are going to have to keep a low profile because I think a lot of the anger will be directed at you. I think, though, that will settle down. And I'm not that worried about the Supreme Court. I know it's a huge issue right now, but justices tend to get in and leave their politics slowly behind them and actually do what they're supposed to do, which is base their decisions on the Constitution. So I keep my fingers crossed on that one. And then I look at the younger generations that are coming up, and I don't see the racism. I see a lot more understanding, certainly on the LGBT issues. I think if there's a future, if America can be saved, can we preserve it long enough for this younger generation to come in and replace these old white supremacists, because I really think they're on the way out.
Okay, very good. And on that note, I want to thank each and every one of you, unless somebody has one final thought that they want to share. I do want to thank each and every one of you for engaging in this conversation on racism today. And I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts that I have. Sadly, I do believe that there are a lot more racists and racism in this country than even I could have possibly imagined, unless the media has just blown it out of proportion. And the other thing I do want to say as well is that, you know, while we talk about Trump and all of the, you know, racists and dog whistles that he blows out there, you know, Trump did not create racism. He has just revealed it. So we need to keep having these conversations. We need to keep talking to each other. And no matter what happens on election day, please stay safe because we're still in a pandemic. Okay. Please stay safe. And yes, did you have something you wanted to say, Terry? Oh, okay.
I was just agreeing.
Okay, okay. Please stay safe. And Osha, I'm really looking forward to the podcast on the Wilmington massacre. So please let us all know when that becomes available. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Aloha kako.
Bye.
Go blue.
Thank you.
Blue.
Thank you.